Welcome to Honestly Rated, and today we'll be talking about your favorite Ninja Turtle lookalike, Thrillipede. And we're going to go over his gameplay, moveset, and overall design to figure out if he is a worthy Skylander or not. First, let's go over the lore for Thrillipede. Thrillipede was part of a Millipede military and was the top pilot in it. He was able to knock off 300 Greeble ships in the Great Greeble War, and with this fact alone, his town loved him, and with all good news, it spread like wildfire and eventually reached up to Finn. Finn kind of wanted to see if these legends or rumors were true, decided to go to Thrillipede and challenge him over a couple challenges, and realized that, yeah, he was pretty much what they were saying. And with that, he joined Skylands, but Finn fashion, he kind of states that he let him win, so he wouldn't get embarrassed in front of his hometown, which, you know, you can take that as true or not, whichever you want. Before we get into the moves, I would like to say that if you want to see your Skylanders on Honestly Rated, leave it down in the comments. Eventually, all of them will be picked. I want to go through every single Skylander in the whole series, so no matter what, your Skylander will be posted at some point. But if I get to know what Skylanders you do want to see, I can go by and choose what Skylanders I need for it, especially like the Series 2s and Series 3s. So yeah, just leave it down in the comments. It doesn't hurt anybody. And other than that, let's get into the first two moves of Thrillipede and go see if he is good or not. Starting off with our Thrillipede, we got Bug Bomb and Bug Brawl. And these two moves is one a physical one and a projectile. And I feel like one overshadows the other, but at the same time, not really. So, Bug Bomb is our projectile move where we throw cocoons, which if there's stuff inside, that is kind of crazy. We are mass murdering many of our insect brothers just to kill a little rat. But other than that, it is a lobbing projectile that can auto-lock from anywhere. He is willing to throw behind himself, throw from the side. Doesn't matter, you don't have to be staring in front of you to throw these things, which is a nice plus. You don't have to be staring at the enemy to kill him, or hit him at least. The problems with it kind of outweigh the niceness of it though, because with this nice lock-on, the damage output of it is very, very little. Doing 15 damage at level 13, it takes a while to kill a lot of things, even on Adventurer mode, just the basic normal mode. And I also find the inaccuracy of these bombs to be a real shy awayness from it. Even though it's locking onto an enemy and it can be thrown from anywhere, if you're moving or just kind of jumping around, it is sometimes kind of hard to even get the bug bombs to even hit. But we do have Bug Brawl, which is just a punching move that basically does the same thing as our bug bombs, but now doing weaker damage and putting ourselves on the front line. They both kind of stink, I won't lie. They're both not great moves, and it's overall just because of the damage output. It's kind of weird to me that the Bug Brawl doesn't do more than the projectile. You would think in that case it would, but it doesn't. And I don't really think the Bug Brawl really hits even faster than the Bug Bombs. And they just don't kind of work well with each other. I don't really see where you would use the Bug Brawl over the Bug Bombs, and I guess you can do vice versa if you like doing physical combat. But yeah, I just don't think they work really well together, and really the damage output's kind of what's killing it, especially at this high of a level. Hopefully it's only up from here, which when we get our special move right after, Cocooned. This is our, like I said, special move, and it allows us to cocoon ourselves and absorb as all the damage that comes towards us. Now, this absorbed damage isn't like a counter, I would say. It is just allowing us to not take damage for whatever reason, you know? It's like Harden in Pokemon. It feels like it doesn't do anything, and realistically, it really doesn't, and you kind of wish to get rid of the move as fast as you can. I really don't like Cocoon. I just don't see the purpose in it. I feel like you can just kind of run away from most moves, and that's it. Now, you could, I guess, just maybe if you're slower than a certain enemy, just kind of use it and then not take damage and then run away. But if you get enough enemies to kind of surround you, you probably won't get out anyway. So you'll probably still get hit in the end. The damage output is a lot more than what we're doing right now, so I guess that's a plus for it. But other than that, it's not really doing much for me gameplay-wise. I'm personally not a person that wants to kind of block moves. I kind of just want to keep running around and hitting things. And again, even though the damage output is great, I think it just kind of harms you more than any type of good. So again, we're not starting off strong here with Thrillipede. Time to do a 2-in-1 with Bug and Cover and Cocooties, because they do the exact same thing, and it's really weird that they paired it into two different things in general. this allows us to gain a slowness effect on our bug bombs and our Cocoon. And Thrillipede as a Skylander isn't really slow, but he is a little bit slower than the norm. But the reason that I think these help a lot though is because of their moves in general. With the Cocoon, like I just mentioned, isn't really like the coolest move ever. It's kind of boring, it doesn't really do much. It does sometimes do a pushback, but if it does, it either barely does, or it does it to enemies that are not even close to you in the beginning. So yeah, it's not great. But now having a slowness to it, it does kind of apply that effect of, hey, you should shield all these moves, do the pushback, and then you can run, and it helps not take as much damage. You probably still maybe will take a couple if there's a lot of enemies surrounding you, but hey, at least you're not taking as much. And for the bug bomb, as I mentioned before too, the bug bomb has a little bit of a hard time landing on enemies, especially if you're moving as a person and if people are chasing you. But with now the slowness effect that is applied every single time you hit an enemy with it, they at least are going to be standing in roughly the same position as normal as before when you threw it. So the bug bombs land a lot more efficiently. The only negative I can say about these two upgrades is that, again, they put them in two different slots. Like they didn't combine them, they didn't put them in one and then make another one later. They put them in the exact same spot, which is super weird and is the only negative of it. But other than that, it's good. It's good for Thrillipede, honestly. Last up on the primary path, we have Mind Your Beeswax, which is honestly more of a special move than the special move we got to learn with our fucking Cocoon. To my opinion, I like this a lot more than it, and it works as like another special in general. I feel like I use this more than the Cocoon in general. This allows us to either place a mine on the ground by holding circle, which is our brawling move, so at least we got something there, because we haven't done anything with our punching or circle in general at all. So at least we got something. Or if we hold down circle and go up close to an enemy, we'll just get to strap it onto their chest and they'll go flying up. That is the whole gimmick with this, is that if they do land on it or you do strap it onto their chest, they will go flying up into the air and take very little damage. It's like 9 to 10 damage per hit and you do like 4 ticks. So roughly like 40 damage maybe around the 30s, which isn't a lot. It's more than we're doing with our normal grenades, but to hold down and have to do that whole little process does take a while, so, you know, damage kind of equals out there. And personally, I don't find it to be the greatest move, but I do kind of like it. It's a nice trap to place on the ground, sometimes a little finicky, and Thrillipede loves to just kind of strap it on people's chests. And if you notice here, the pushback on this thing is somewhat insane. I don't know why it pushes back so far with strapping onto people's chests, but you can. And another thing that I forgot to mention too is that with our little slowness effect with those little dragonflies going around enemies, if you do strap the bomb onto the chest, it blows up all the little butterflies around, or dragonflies, wherever the fuck they're supposed to be, on every other enemy. Now the slowness doesn't stay on for a long time, so you kind of have to just throw out a couple and then instantly try to stick one on to one of the enemies. But it does a lot of damage, and it's a nice way to kind of clear a little group. And I think that's honestly Thrillipede's kind of biggest issue so far, is that with groups, he isn't really well diverse into killing them with any of his moves. The only move that really hits multiple is sometimes the punch if they're kind of behind people, and our Cocoon. But the Cocoon is the Cocoon. I don't fucking care about it. So yeah, overall, this is a lot better of a special than what we got already, and a nice way to kind of end off the primary section in general. Now we get to talk to our paths, where we're going to look at the top path, Mighty Morphosis, and the first move, Better Fly. This is a move that is basically all visuals, no show, because it is just a sped up version of our bomb throwing. That's it. But it looks really cool. So it gives our Cocoon somewhat of a secondary function, where if we hold this down now, when it's starting to flash that green, we turn into a beautiful dragonfly, I guess. We just get wings, and as we're in the sky, we get to throw down a bunch of bombs, and sadly, this doesn't do any more damage, even though they're literally clusters of 3 bombs. You think it would at least do somewhat more damage, or just have like a bigger overall hit, like a bigger explosion, hit more multiple things, but no, it's the exact same damage, but you look cool doing it, and you can't move around when you're flying. It is purely, you're just up there, just throwing down bombs, and that's really it. That's it. Hooray, that's all, folks. So, it doesn't do a lot. It does look cool, I'll give it that. And I guess you will tend to probably not get hit as much when you're in the sky since you are floating, so you could give it that too. But other than those two things, it is all show and nothing else comes out of it. The last two for the top path are some of the best things that Thrillipede gets: bugging out and ticket to them. They're very great moves. They're super great moves. Bugging out allows us to do more damage with our grenades, which is super beneficial to the fact that Thrillipede himself is just not doing a lot of damage. As you saw before, at like level 15/16, we were still doing like 16 damage, and this is not beneficial in the slightest if you're gonna do nightmare runs or you're gonna do even just hard runs in general. Doing this little of damage with a projectile that doesn't always hit is very not nice. So having the increased damage at least being 20 is a lot better, especially in adventure mode where I do all these just to guarantee the same playing field. It is so much better. Then to our next one, ticket to them is a great move. Maybe you won't see for right now, but in the future you will. Ticket to them allows us to drop a bomb on the ground, which is very beneficial. As you remember before, when we want to use our sticky bombs, we had to hold O and either find an open area to drop that little mine onto the ground or stick it to an enemy on their chest and just hold them to it. Now, even though putting a bomb on the people's chest is a lot more of a smart idea just based on damage-wise, just having a mine on the ground, just kind of like if the enemy's chasing you and not having to like, you know, hold O and not do anything, is a lot more beneficial. It's super well and nice, but our soul gem is gonna like directly correlate to this, so keep this upgrade in your mind and just don't forget it. I'll probably mention it again later, but just keep in mind this one. This one's a lot better when we get to the soul gem, but we do have a whole bottom path to kind of take a look at, so let's go over those first and then wrap it all up. Onto the bottom path with insistent insects, which our first one's going to be gnawing gnats. This allows for our bug bombs to now deal overtime damage after hitting an enemy, and that's really it. That's our first one, and actually is our only upgrade to add a new playing field to Thrillipede with the bottom path, which is really weird. Every move that I'm going to talk about next is actually just an upgrade to the gnawing gnats, which is super weird to talk about. So instead of really talking about this move, I just kind of want to mention that it's really weird that one, our Cocoon and punching moves really didn't get an upgrade throughout Thrillipede's whole thing, and only the bug bombs really got the interesting things. Now, the top path did have the Cocoon upgrade with the butterfly, and I guess you can say the sticky bombs did kind of like do something with punching, but I see those as two different moves. At least like a damage upgrade to the punching moves would have been kind of nice, because other than that, you're still doing like 15, 16 damage when you use the punchers. And if you take the top path where you're doing like 25 with each bug bomb, why would you ever pick? Why would you ever pick using the punching instead of just throwing bombs around? Like, why would you? And even here, down here, where you have at least, you know, lingering damage with our bug bombs, why would you punch? The punch doesn't add anything to it. And it's something I do want to mention because it is going to go into my overall ending for Thrillipede, because it's just really weird that only realistically one move throughout his whole path got an upgrade. Like, something to like kind of scoff at and be like, whoa, that's kind of cool. And even though, like, again, the Cocoon did kind of get something with the butterfly thing on the top path only, and the bug bombs do somewhat correlate to the punching in general, the punching itself did not get anything. So yeah, really weird. But let's go over the upgrades that this gnawing gnats shit gets. Speaking of upgrades, here they are with nesting gnat and insect epidemic. Now, this kind of strengthens the overall game plan that these upgrades kind of tend to yield, but I still find it to be the more boring path of the two. And even with these upgrades, I feel like they still kind of somewhat balance out, I guess, kind of what they were using. So nesting gnats allows for the damage increase for the damage of the gnats if you hit them for a couple more times. It says you can stack it up to 5 times, so I'm guessing if you hit an enemy up to 5 times, it'll increase the damage double. So it'll double the damage, which is cool, I guess. And more damage to a larger load of enemies, which is nice. And with that too, Insect Epidemic is actually a pretty nice upgrade to get. Insect Epidemic I couldn't really figure out when it does this explosion, but it allows for the enemies that do have this stuck onto them explode and deal damage to everybody around them. And it does kind of help with Thrillipede's biggest problem, which is that he can't really handle a crowd. A lot of his moves don't deal with crowds really well, and I forget if I mentioned it just a little bit or if I didn't, but the only thing that really helps Thrillipede kill crowds is his Cocoon. And we know how good the Cocoon is. It's not really. So this in itself just kind of clears out a crowd kind of quickly if you get the explosion to happen. Now again, I can't really tell you when this explosion happens, but from the gameplay you just saw right there, it does happen, and it obliterates everybody around them. Because it's like the only move that he really got that can kind of hit multiple things at once. His punch can somewhat do it, but not to the great effect of what Insect Epidemic can do it. But even with this one pretty nice move to kind of help one of his more blundering, additions to fighting, I still think the top path is overall what you want to go for, just because like you're maybe doing a lot of damage to a lot of things here, but who says that the top path can't do that just because, again, you're already getting a damage increase to your bug bombs. You can throw bug bombs pretty fast with the butterfly one, and overall I just think the top path just does it really well. And for the soul gem, the top path helps the most with it. So let's go talk about the soul gem now, because it is actually a pretty solid soul gem if you get to the top path. Now for the time you've been waiting for with Beauty Flies. A pretty simple move that does a lot for Thrillipede, honestly. So this allows us to strap bombs onto enemies' chest or throw them on the ground, and every time that happens, it will drop 2 butterflies that will fly from left and right that heal up to 73 damage. And it usually does it twice, so 73 plus 73, what is that, 146? That's really, really good. That amount of health is really nice. And now you see why the top path is probably the most preferred path. You get to drop literally a load of sticky bombs onto someone's head. And sometimes the bomb strat with just like kind of sticking it onto their chest works. It sometimes doesn't. It seems like chompies and things that kind of die in one don't give you the butterflies if you strap it onto their chest. But the thing that I've always seen it give you with the butterflies for is if you have the trap down, which if you jump and throw the trap down, it's gonna count. It is a beautifully made move that is beautifully made for the soul gem that you would be missing out on if you didn't pick the top path. So those are my reasons for the top path, and just overall why you should go with the top path. I'm not saying the bottom path is like the worst. Again, I think it does fix Thrillipede's biggest problem with multiple enemies being on screen, but I just don't think it's overall worth it. And I feel like if you just, take it a little bit slower with the top path, you just won't have to deal with large groups in the general. So, yeah. But time to go on to our final rating after taking a look at all of Thrillipede's moves and design-wise. So, after reviewing everything again and making sure I pinpointed every single arm and leg that Thrillipede's got, my final rating for Thrillipede is going to be a solid 2 out of 5. Because I personally don't think he is bottom of the barrel bad. I just think he is just slightly above that barrel, but still pretty bad. Thrillipede, even though personally I find him to be somewhat of a looking like a cool guy, looks like Michelangelo a little bit, he's got the same color scheme. He doesn't really do much. I just can't find like the most fun thing about him. And it sucks. It really does suck. I think his or at least the Cocoon move kind of just doesn't do much. His punching overall doesn't do much. It kind of ends up being like, how many bombs can you throw down, and then how many sticky bombs can you stick on enemies? That's kind of his whole game plan. And again, he has that problem where you really can't kill a group too well unless you go with the bottom path. But then if you go for the bottom path, for one, you're just taken away from healing, right, with your soul gem, because the soul gem is pretty good. And the top path just overall makes that even better than the fucking bottom path. Then you do get a damage increase from the top path, which, in some ways you can kind of see it as like, oh, the whole bottom path is trying to deal with like increasing your damage by using overtime damage, while the top path literally does it in one with a damage increase that works perfectly fine. It works perfectly great. And then you got the butterfly, which is like whatever. It's like cosmetically cool. That's really all it's for. But overall, Thrillipede's main funness is just if you find just throwing bombs around kind of fun, you know, you find it fun, and I guess he overall looks kind of cool. But design-wise, move-wise, and damage-wise, everything kind of going for him was just kind of against him in this whole ring, which sucks. It really does. But that's what I rate him, honestly. And again, if you want to see your character up next Saturday, leave it down in the comments, and maybe I'll pick it soon, you know? Yeah, you never know. You never know. Even I don't know. So, yeah, thank you for everybody that does comment, and thank you for even watching this far. Hope to see you next Saturday, and maybe check out my other content too. It's not all Skylanders related, but other than that, thank you guys, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Peace.